What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another week and another episode of Unscripted, where we bring you professionals from all walks of life. We touch on their backstory, their mindset, and how they navigate through adversity and opposition. As always, I'm your host, Akeem Haynes. Before we get into this week's episode, do us a huge favor. Head over to Apple Podcast, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or Chartable.com and leave a rating and review of the show. This small act goes a long way in moving the podcast forward. So thank you for those that have taken the time. I appreciate you. This week on the show, he's got 26 years of coaching experience. He's the co-founder and CEO of Altis, and he's also their present short sprints coach. He's coached over 70 Olympians across 9 Olympic Games, both winter and summer, helping attain over 30 Olympic medals. He's an author, a coffee connoisseur. He's also a DJ, in which you'll find out in this episode. He's a man of many hats. I'm talking about Stuart McMillan joins me on the show. This is a special episode for me because there's not many people who are on this show who have known me since I started. Since I was 15 years old is when I first met Stu. And he coached me throughout high school. I went off to college, and 4 years later, after we reunited and he became my coach again from 2015, 2017, and we were able to win a medal together. I will absolutely let you get into the episode shortly here, but there's just a couple things that I want to share about this conversation. The first interaction that Stu and I had wasn't a very good one. Yeah, I know. You know, there's very few people at that time who I met that was more serious than me. And he was more serious than me, and we didn't really get along at the beginning. But, you know, over time he grew on me. And clearly, we continued to meet at the same place, and we continued to work together, continued to stay in touch. But the other story that I wanted to share was I was fresh out of college when I went pro, when I moved out to Phoenix. Now, I didn't have any money or anything else like that, but I did have a book came out, and I spent all my money towards making that book and creating that book. And I took the first few earnings of that book and I bought my plane ticket, and so I was in Phoenix, but all I had was a pillow. I had a couple sheets, but that's pretty much all I had, and the clothes that I brought with me. Now, I remember there was a time when we were in practice and I was getting worked on, and they were talking about sleep and the importance of sleep for athletes, and I said, Stu, how important is it for an athlete to have, say, a bed, right? Is that an important thing when it comes to sleep? And he said, absolutely. See, at the time, I had a good friend of mine, Joel Lynch, who let me use his air mattress. And so I was on the floor for a couple weeks, and then I was on the air mattress for a couple months, but it was a big upgrade for me. So anyway, I take this conversation home, didn't really think too much of it. They didn't think too much of it. But the next day I was in the weight room. About a month later, I was in the weight room. I was just sitting down between sets, and he goes and he sits beside me and he says, when were you going to tell me that you didn't have a bed? I was like, it wasn't a big deal. I was like, you know, track and field really isn't this this money-making machine, right? I was just going out there with the intention of seeing how much further that I could go out here with this dream of track and field and trying to make this Olympic team and so forth. So I really wasn't thinking too much of it. But to show the heart of Stu, that same day he came over with a bed, right, with a mattress, and my sleep got incredibly better. But it was a testament of who he is as a person and where his heart is, and I always appreciated that, and I just wanted to share this story. I didn't ask him about it in this conversation, but I wanted to share it with the audience and for those listening. Many know Stu, but there's also a different side of him that many don't know as well too. And throughout this conversation, hopefully you will see that, because we get into his upbringing, we get into him moving from the UK to Canada and some of the cultural adjustments, how we started coaching, the hilarious story of how he met Donovan Bailey, the importance of support, when he met Dan Paff and how Dan Paff impacted his life. We talk about how he handles mistakes, criticism, and personal development and progress. We talk about the evolution of finding purpose for him, why he left art school, why he stopped coaching and came back to it, and a bunch of other stories in between. Again, as I said, this is a very special episode to me because I've known him for so long, but you will get to see Stu in a different light than just the coaching genius that he is. So without further ado, enjoy this week's episode with Stuart McMillan. Stu.
How are you, buddy?
Oh man, I'm well, man. What's going on over there?
It's cold. Atlanta's cold. It's not like Phoenix.
See, you got to clear that up with me because people have been trying to sell me on this idea of Atlanta being extremely cold. Well, come on, man. Come on, man.
Well, it's not Calgary. But guy, I left Calgary in 2010. I'm not used to this anymore, right? I mean, it's good though. It's good. I kind of missed having seasons and weather being in Phoenix. It's the same all the time. You get tired of it, right? So it's good to be like I literally, and I wore shorts and flip-flops every day for 9 years. Like I don't even have shoes, man. I don't have shoes. I don't have long pants. I don't have sweaters. I had to go and buy a hat. Yeah, it's so that's good. I mean, it's good to have some variability, some different weather and stuff. It's been around.
Man, that was one of my things, man. What's the word? I'm doing my best juggling act at the moment. There's a lot of things happening. Obviously, planning for a wedding is a whole new beast by itself. Yep. But man, for the most part, man, I've always been one to take it one day at a time. You know how it goes, man. If you think too much about all the other stuff, you'll create that formula of chaos in a world that is very chaotic at the moment, man.
Well, I mean, life, and you're figuring this out, right? That's what life is. Life is juggling and managing all the chaos. Yeah, and it doesn't get to a point where you juggle less stuff or become less chaotic. It's the same. We just get better at dealing with it.
Stu, man, I want to jump into the conversation, man, but I know we already started. But man, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Over the years, people have asked me a bunch of questions about you. I'm just like, just ask the guy. You know what I'm saying? But I'm going to try to formulate a bunch of questions that I've had. People have asked me for the past, 9 years and try to conjunction all of it in one notion. But the first one, man, is, I'm big on gratitude, man. So give me 3 things you're grateful for today, man.
Well, we're always grateful for our health. So I'm grateful to be still living and feeling good at 52 years old.
Hey, looking strong too.
Thanks, brother. Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm grateful for I'm still healthy and kicking here on this planet. Second, I'm doing things that I really dig with people that I really dig. So I'm really grateful to still be in a position where I can coach young people and help to guide young people and do that with people that I really enjoy spending time with. So I'm super grateful for that. And then I'm grateful for the people that I'm able to do that with and the trust that they have that I'm able to do that with them. Because I think sometimes we take that for granted. I've taken that for granted as a coach over the years from time to time where, you have to sometimes step outside yourself a little bit and look at all of these people that are here. And a lot of them are here because of you, and it's sometimes I've taken that for granted and I try not to do that anymore. So I'm really grateful that the people around me, whether that's staff that work with me or for me, or the athletes that have moved across the country or across the world to a new city, a new place for them, just to be here with us, doing what they're doing with us. So I'm really grateful for that.
Man, you just talked about stepping outside of yourself, man. When did that happen for you? Was it an experience or was it just a realization through age and time?
Yeah, it's something that you get better at, I believe, just over as you mature. When I was younger, everything was about me, as it is with most people when you're young, right? You just live in your own little world. It's a small world. You haven't experienced a lot of the world yet. So all you're really cognizant of is everything that's in your little small world, and you're the center of that world. And over the course of time, you start to realize that there's a much bigger world, and you're probably not at the center of it.
Yeah.
So, and at that point, you spend more time sort of stepping outside of your world and looking into your world and being a little bit more, extrospective, not just introspective all the time. So you're looking into it and seeing, okay, where are you in context of all this stuff that's in this system that you're a part of? Because that's all we are really. We're just one small cog in this big system of life that's interrelated to all these other small cogs, right? And we feel that sometimes, when we're younger, that we're the central cog. When we're not, we're just a piece. We're just a piece with all these other pieces. And it's much more important for us to understand how we relate to all of those people, all these other pieces, than it is what that individual singular piece is. But I feel like that's a process that we all go through, right? We have this process of self-identity first. We figure out who we are, what we do, what we like to do, why we're here. And then we start to understand where we sit in the whole big system of things. So it's a process, as you know, man. You go through life, and ideally you just get better at this, and you understand it, at a greater depth as you go through this 70, 80, 90, 100 years that we're on this planet.
You spoke about us being the center of our world. Well, our world was shaken up a little bit these past couple of years, Stu. With the pandemic happening and everything that comes, I mean, we're still dealing with it, man. But you and I haven't been able to touch base in a little bit here. And the last time that we were able to touch base physically, it's ironically enough, I got this notification on my phone, and it was a picture. You were behind me, and I was wearing blue, and I had my hair like dyed. First and foremost, why'd y'all let me do that? That's first.
Good, man. You always look good. It was good, man. I remember. You had a yellow goldie hair. It was good.
Yeah, man. I went to Florida. I forgot what it was. And every single person had the same hairstyle, and I came back and I cut it off. I'm like, man, I did this to stand out. Everybody's looking the same. But this next question, Stu, is a loaded question, because when the pandemic hit, to pivoting not only as a coach, but as the CEO of Altis and trying to pivot with that, what was that like for you? Not only for separate from the athletes, but for you, the person, for you, the CEO, for you, the coach, but also the communication between the athlete, being on the other side of sport now. When it happened, a lot of people were reaching out to me athlete wise and saying, man, I'm about to shut the season down. I'm like, why? You don't want to shut the season down. It's April, right? You got to train your body throughout that time, so it doesn't come from an 8-9 month layoff. But how did you instill in them some sort of hope, communication to continue going when you didn't know what it was going to look like? And the last one to that loaded question, Stu, is when the games was finally back on, leading up to it, what was that process like, man? And give me your thoughts regarding the game's performance and maybe some of the highlights for you. I know it's a lot there, but hey, man.
I'm supposed to remember all that question, man. I'm 52 years old. I can remember one sentence at a time.
You better than me.
It's obviously first and foremost super challenging for everybody. Coach, athlete, everybody in the world had a really challenging last 2 years. And the lead up to when the insecurity around whether the games were going to happen or not was very, very challenging for so many athletes. We were quite lucky, as one of our mutual good friends was in a position where he could give us a little bit of insight a little bit earlier than many other groups on whether the games were going to go ahead or not. And of course, I'm talking about Steve Messler, who's on the board of USOPC, and he was, privy to a lot of the inside information. So we knew pretty early that this is probably not going to happen. And as well, we were working with a lot of Chinese athletes who were on the ground over in China, and they were told really early as well that this is probably not going to happen. Like Japan's not going to happen next year. And in fact, Beijing at that point they were wondering whether that was even going to happen, right? So we didn't have to be quite as reactive as everybody else. But that said, we still did I think it was an opportunity, not only for us, but probably more so for all of the athletes, that the general athletic experience it's just here, right? It doesn't extend too much outside past the end of your noses. as an athlete. And you have to be that way, right? It's a fairly selfish, somewhat narcissistic lifestyle for many of the more elite athletes on the planet. Out of necessity, you kind of have to be that way if you want to really be truly elite. And there's exceptions, obviously. That's a very general way of putting it. But what the pandemic did is it forced all of these athletes to look beyond the edge of their noses, and where they were forced to see what was happening in the world here, and that maybe I'm not the center of it. And a lot of athletes really struggled with that. They really struggled with, now, okay, I don't have this thing anymore that I'm getting out of bed for every morning. I don't have games in 6 months or 9 months or a year or whatever. I don't even have training because I don't have a group to go to. I don't, we're all on lockdown here. That was really, really challenging for a lot of athletes. And as you know, a lot of them ended up retiring because of that. Yeah. Because they had these existential questions that they'd never really had to come to grips with before, because it was always answered for them. They existed to compete in sport. You take sport away, and now what do we do? Right? That's a real challenge that all athletes come to eventually at the end of the careers, and we know how they struggle with that. It's very, it never happens when they have to ask these questions of themselves in the middle of their careers. That was really hard for a lot of athletes. And we had a few actually that did retire because of that. They didn't, when it came time to, okay, the games are back on, it's been pushed back a year, and the motivation wasn't there anymore. Yeah. So that was the next step, was, okay, now that we know that the games are coming in next year, where's that motivation coming from? And how is it now that you understand more of the big picture, where you sit in this big picture on this planet? And now can you push that aside and become selfish again? And you just become about you again. And some athletes struggle with that, and some athletes did really, really well with it. So it was from an athletic standpoint or from an athlete standpoint, complex, super complex. But from everybody else, I mean, we all had our challenges, right? We had our massive challenge as a company was just to stay afloat for 2 years. Yeah. Right? We struggled for a long time as a company. And then we were in a significant amount of debt. We did all we could to dig ourselves out of debt. And it took us about 3 years to finally get debt free. And then the pandemic happened. And 6 of our 7 revenue streams disappeared overnight. So, okay, what do we now have to do as a company? What do we now have to do as individuals within this company? How do we need to pivot to ensure that we still have a company on the other end of this pandemic? So that's where the creativity comes from, being, having the experience within this to understand, okay, what do we need to do? How do we need to act now? How do we need to lead? How do we need to communicate within ourselves to ensure that we're, sustainable above and beyond what's going on here in the world? So that was super challenging for us. And honestly, it remains really challenging. It's hard times for many small businesses, as you know.
How do you handle problem solving at this point in your life, Stu? Because, and we're going to get into the younger, up and coming Stuart McMillan before the beard, right? We're going to get into that a little bit, but as the evolution goes on, we attack certain challenges a little bit differently. So how do you attack problem solving at this stage in your life compared to, say, that 25, 30-year-old Stuart McMillan? What correlations and transformations have you seen from you?
Yeah, I think what happens with experience and with wisdom is you do a better job of understanding the root of problems, and you're not just reacting to symptoms of those problems. I think when we're younger, we see something as a symptom, and then we try and react to that. We see a problem as a symptom, and then we react to that symptom, and you're essentially effectively making the problem worse by just reacting on a symptom of that problem. Where over the course of time, you can understand, again, you can see the problem in context. You can see, okay, if I do this, this is what happens. If I do that, this would happen. This isn't actually a problem. It's just a symptom of something that's a little bit deeper. And we get better and better at just understanding the root cause of it. So that's kind of where and it's all a process. As I said, I'm definitely not the finished article, and I still continue to try to get better at understanding the world that we live in and all the problems that we see. But I feel like that's probably, from my perspective, I think what I've been able to do better over the course of the last 10, 15 years is, as I said earlier, is you can understand where you fit in the context of all the other stuff that's going on. So where you can see then where this problem fits within all these other things, and how all of these different potential solutions and the strategies that you can implement to try to affect this problem, you do a better job of understanding which is the right one. Now, you might still make mistakes, and we do, obviously, we always do. But I think now we can eliminate, if there's 10 different roads to travel, we do a better job of eliminating 8 of them. And we're just picking between these 1 or 2, when, 20 years ago, I might be able to only eliminate 1. So it's something that obviously just comes with wisdom, and you just, it's just doing a better job of stepping outside of ourselves and seeing where we fit in the big picture. And that's a constant challenge, as you know, because we're living inside of our own brains. So we have to be intentional anytime we want to step outside of it and look within.
Yeah. Let's rewind a bit, Stu. Many people see you now in this regard, but I think a lot of times the process and the journey can be discouraging, and in the process of wanting to be like someone or follow that path, the journey is a little bit different for each and every single person. But you go back and your journey started, on the soccer field. That's the earliest stories that I know about you. But I also know as well too that you started coaching with your dad at 14. Was that before you came to Canada or after you came to Canada? And just walk us through a little bit of that journey right there.
How do you know that?
Hey man, I got good sources and good memories, man.
Yeah, we moved to Canada from the UK when I was 12, and I had designs on becoming a professional soccer player when I was at that age. And my dad was a semi-professional soccer player back in the UK, and when we moved to Canada, he was a coach at that point, and became a coaching coordinator of this big club in Calgary called the Calgary Eagles. And when I was 14, I was playing, obviously, with the under 14 team, but he asked me if I would like to coach one of the under 12 or under 11 teams. So I started coaching when I was 14, and I coached all the way up, coached soccer until I left for Hamilton, I think in 1992. So I'd always sort of been a coach, and that was always what I'd wanted to do. Growing up in a coaching household where performance was important and learning was important and teaching other people was important and guiding younger people was important. So that was always sort of became something that, just became important to me, just out of osmosis, essentially. So that was the early days. That's how I got interested in it. And then there's a whole long story about how I ended up becoming a bobsled coach and a sprint coach. And actually, Akeem, I mean, my sprint coaching kind of got reignited with you, as you know. Mm-hmm. So when I was in Calgary, I started as a sprint coach in 1994. And I built a nice little group in Calgary up until about 2001. And then I became, a de facto bobsled coach because that's how you could make a living in Calgary. You couldn't make a living as a sprint coach, believe it or not, in Calgary.
You don't say.
I know you're shocked. So my focus became bobsled and coaching speed for football players and soccer again and other sports. And then, through our mutual great friend, Ken Rose, I met you in whatever year that was. When you were in grade 11, I think, maybe grade 10 or grade 11.
Yeah. I gotta tell the story. I'm gonna let you finish.
And then, it's obviously you were super talented, and we started working with you and worked with you until I left for the UK. And it was that work with you that actually reignited my love for speed, like true speed, not just speed as part of something else, but only speed, where speed was the only thing that mattered. And that got me, okay, I need to get back into this more, which took me over to the UK and working with Dan Paff and UK Athletics and all the, elite people over there. That eventually led to me heading out to Phoenix and starting what is at the time, World Athletics Center, and it became Altis. So it's all down to you, buddy.
Hey, man. Hey, look, I'm gonna send you a little invoice a little bit later. I'm gonna send you a little invoice later, and we can talk about the years missed. But, man, before I get into a little bit about that, this question just came to mind because, you've always been someone who watches and analyzes first before you speak second. And that was one of the things that I learned how we best communicate at the beginning when we first started working together. But when you were a young coach watching your dad, man, what did he teach you? And what were you watching exactly during that time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought about that. And honestly, I don't know if I remember anything about coaching, the specific part about how to be a coach. It's more than it was just how to carry yourself as a human being and how to treat people with respect, how to communicate properly. My dad wasn't one of those coaches who was just a screamer or a yeller or a whistleblower or a stopwatch holder. He was intentional about having, impact with a positive impact with the athletes he was working with. And that always stuck with me. And then, so my dad was my primary mentor, obviously, as a human, as it is with most men on the planet, but wasn't really a mentor as a coach to me, other than what those sort of general traits that he, carried forth in all of his daily dealings with everybody, how that was sort of passed along to me. It wasn't until I met Dan Dan Paff in 1995 where this is a coach that I want to be like, not just a human being or a man that I want to be like, but this is, excuse me, this is how I want to be as a coach. This is my lighthouse now. There's Dan Paff. He's the lighthouse. He's out there, in 20 years older than me or whatever it is. That's what I want to be like. And then I, came back to Calgary after that. And how do I become like that person over there? Because for me, that's what coaching was. How he did it was what I was really interested in being.
But before we get into the actual coaching part, Stu, there's a part in the story and the journey that I don't think many people understand the capacity of, that I've been able to be privy to. And it kind of starts with your with your Instagram name, right? Finger Mash, right? People see that, they're probably like, man, just an interesting guy, something deep, right? But if my memory serves me correctly, this was your DJ name, right? And I know from our conversations, the music you listen to, you're very big on music, and one of those types of music is reggae music. And I know once Mr. Rose hears this, he's going to send me a message and say something because of what I'm going to say next, because I always make fun of him for him. I know you had a very extensive collection of reggae tapes, and so talk to me a little bit about some of the cultural changes that shaped you when you moved from the UK to Canada, right? Because it's different. It's different, right? But from a cultural standpoint, what were some of the things that kind of helped you grow as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think those years, right? So I moved to Canada when I was just turned 12. I was just turning 12. And, the years where from 12 to 18 just play such a big part of who you become, right? And the character that you are. So it's not just what happens at home, but it's all the people that you surround yourself with. It's what's going on at school, what's going on in your sports, what's going on with your friends. So when I first moved to Calgary, I moved 2 weeks into a new school year, number one, right? So everybody had already partnered up, right? All these little, groups had boys already, everyone was friends. And it was just me, this funny looking guy with a funny accent, just moved here from England. And I had no friends, no friends, zero friends, but except for one. Because one other kid moved to Calgary on that same day and was in the same homeroom as me. His name was Wade. And me and Wade became boys. And Wade's parents, like he was a Jamaican kid. Yeah. So Wade's parents were obviously Jamaican. the father owned a sound system and the mother was a great cook.
Great
So
combo.
that became sort of, all right, this is my boy now. I got into reggae through him and through his father's extensive record collection. And I got into Jamaican culture and Jamaican food and all of this through this family, right? So I started hanging out with the family and with Wade, and we eventually started DJing together. You know, we started DJing when I was probably grade 11, so 16 or 17. And it just sort of grew from there. You know, my appreciation for the music, the culture, the food, everything around it just grew. And that it like, as I said, it formed such a big part of who I would become, and how, you know, you get to experience and respect and appreciate not just this, in this specific instance, the Jamaican culture, but all these different cultures, which is, I feel like, something that, you know, Canada does a pretty good job of. You know, we talk about the US being this big melting pot. Well, it's not, as you know, right? It's a very segregated melting pot, because you got a community here, you got a community there, and a community over there, and they're all kind of separate. It's not a melting pot where, you know, you walk down the street and you've got different people from different cultures speaking different languages all within the same block. That's a true melting pot. And I think we had a better understanding and experience of that actually in Calgary, funnily enough, right? Obviously, it was still dominated by one, you know, majority culture, but there was still other people that you got to understand and respect and appreciate. And I always enjoyed that. And especially, you know, there was just something about the Jamaican culture that always appealed to me. And I think it started with the food and the music, and you know, eventually, you know, led to me, all right, I need to find a way to get, because everybody knew that I like reggae, and all the white people would say, "Oh, you mean Bob Marley?"
Yeah, that's all they know, right?
Yeah, plus. Yes, Bob Marley plus, right? And you know, the white people wouldn't really understand that Bob Marley just wasn't, like, he's obviously a massive hero in Jamaica, but he's just one of hundreds of other people in Jamaica, right? And arguably, he maybe wasn't even the biggest hero. There's all these other people that were making incredible music that had as much respect to the Jamaican people as Bob Marley did. So it became sort of a, you know, a problem that I tried to solve in the Calgary community. How do I stop people from asking me this question? Oh, you mean like Bob? Or Bob Marley? Or Bob Marley and the Wailers? Yes, plus. So we started this, you know, this reggae show on the radio station there, where our job was essentially, or our goal was to introduce the Calgary community to reggae music, and this incredibly rich and diverse musical community to the Calgary community. And it's I mean, I'm super happy and proud to say that to this day, that show still exists. Level the Vibes, right? We started that in 1998. Wow. I did it for 12 years before I left to go back to the UK in 2010, and it's still going. So with my former DJ partner, Tullo, he's still doing it with Sweet Pea, Patrick. I believe it's on Saturdays now. It used to be on Sundays, but it's, yeah, I love that time of my life, man. It's, I remember, you know, through the 90s when I was really getting deep into this with our friend Ken Rose and Donovan and a bunch of other guys. It's, you know, some of my best times, my best memories was just playing reggae and playing dominoes until 4 in the morning, cooking food, eating food, playing dominoes, and listening to music. Great times. What
are 3 artists that you can listen to? Just put the music on and just listen to the whole album straight. Who are 3 of your favorites?
So Gregory Isaacs, Cool Ruler. I've never met anybody who doesn't like Gregory Isaacs, men and women. He's incredible voice, incredible singer. Well over 100 albums that he made over the course of his career. Dennis Brown, the Crown Prince, again, just a contemporary of Gregory. Many people outside of Jamaica don't know who Dennis Brown is, but he's a massive, massive hero in Jamaica, as is Gregory Isaacs, obviously. And third, I'd say John Holt, John Holt died 2 years ago. And I feel like John Holt, for me, might have the greatest singing voice of all singers, all genres of all time. He's just such an incredibly powerful voice.
Before high school, Stu, many also people don't know, and I hope my information is, this is all from memory from what I'm trying to formulate.
It's not from memory, man. Come on now.
Hey man, it's all from memory, because
there's even talking to up
there. There's bits and pieces that I'm trying to get together here to give people the full story of the man, right? After high school, I think Rose told me one time you started doing art, correct? If I remember correctly, like you did a semester of something with art, right?
Yeah, that was my thing. So I was in junior high school and high school. I was the artist and an athlete. I was a pretty good athlete. I was decent at a bunch of different things, but there were people in school that were way more athletic than I was. But there wasn't anybody in school that was a better artist than me. That was my thing. That was my thing always growing up, is I was the artist. My dad was a good artist. And I always felt like that was what I was going to do with my life. If I didn't play professional sports, and by the time that I got to the end of high school, it became pretty clear to me that professional sport and making a living playing professional sport wasn't going to be for me. But art was, because I was really good at that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I went to art school for, I believe, a year and a half. And then, I figured out that wasn't for me. Let's just put it that way. I didn't know what it meant, right? I just knew that this is what I was good at. And this is why I feel like it's so hard for your typical 17-year-old to make decisions that's going to affect the entirety of their lives at that age. You don't know yourself yet. You don't know what you're interested in yet. You don't know what you want to spend the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life doing. All I knew was I'm good at art. I like doing it. And I'm good at sport, and I like doing that. And I'm good at music, and I like doing music. But I didn't know really how to make a career in any of them. So I figured, okay, let me go to art school. And, at least what that did, and I feel like this is, one of my greatest strengths is, this isn't for me. Let me pivot and go do something else that is for me. Where not most, but a lot of people will say, well, this is what I do. This is what I'm good at. And I'm going to just continue doing this, and then spend 4 years to get a degree in it, and then shrug their shoulders, asking, well, what's next? What am I going to do now? Maybe they'll start a job in that, and then 5 years later, they're in this miserable job, and now they're it's a sunk cost, and now they're in there, and they spend the next 30, 40 years of their life miserable. That's less of a thing now than it was, say, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when people did get into a career and there was way less pivoting going on. Obviously, now it's not so much the case, but at the time that was different. So for me, it was a pretty easy decision, actually, for a year and a half into art school to say to myself, I can't see myself doing this for a career for the rest of my life. So let me figure out something else. And that's when I went to, I decided to take an English degree, and I wanted to be an English professor. And this is how, I'm 19 at this point. So 19, you think, you're a man at 19 years old. But this was the stupid logic that's going on in my brain when I'm 19. I wanted to be an English professor because I wanted to wear a tweed jacket and smoke a pipe and teach English. I felt that this is what I had. This is what I thought being an English professor would be. That sounds like a great gig. I'll go be a professor of English at a university, own a cool tweed jacket, and smoke a pipe, and just, that's my life.
And just philosophize.
Right, and just philosophize. That's what I wanted to do. And that it took me, I think, 6 weeks to figure out that wasn't for me. I'm not going to be an English professor. And that leaves music and sport. And I didn't feel like at the time that Calgary was the place to be, build a career in music. And I wasn't talented enough at anything in music to understand that there was a career there anyway. I was just a DJ who collected records. I didn't play any instruments or anything. So it became sport. So let me go and do a physical education degree. So that's what I did, and found myself back into coaching through that.
The story of how you and I met, it was 2000, and I had to have been 16. So 2009. No, a lie. 2009. Mr. Rose comes and says, "Hey man, I have this guy you want to work with." But
I think it was '08. I think
was
it
it
was
oh
08.
08? Oh 08?
Yeah.
That's yes, because 09, one of those years I got hurt. I don't remember which one it was, 2010. But anyway, so Mr. O says, I have this guy that I want you to work with. And I'm just like, I already did not want to do track. And he suckered me in by saying, man, if you do track, it'll get you faster for football. And I'm not the smartest guy, but I know 1+1=2. So I said, okay, this must make some type of sense. And so after school comes, he's outside and it's just you. I'm like, where's everybody else? And I remember you're like, okay, let's start with an A skip. So I do an A skip. I get to halfway. You're like, stop, go back. Do an A skip again. You're like, stop, go back. Do a B skip. You're like, stop, go back. And I don't even remember what we did that practice, but I remember coming in and Mr. Rose said, well, how was it? And I was like, you know what, man? I don't think he really likes me, but it's cool because I don't think I really like him either. And I don't want to do track anyway. And he starts laughing and he says, man, why don't you talk to him? And we spent about 20 minutes after talking as well to it. And he was telling me a little bit about the backstory of the frustration and how you kind of just stepped away from sport in a sense as a whole before you came back in this capacity. But then the next day he told me, he's like, man, he really likes you. I was like, what are you talking about? You weren't out there to really understand what was happening. So walk me through a little bit about that, Stu, because, Canada in that time was a lot different than it is now. There's certain things that you probably couldn't do, probably tried to do, but it was new, it was different, and they probably weren't really probably facing a lot of resistance in that sense. Walk me through about that stage.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. There's a lot of resistance to what I was trying to do. And, you can only take so much resistance for so long before it starts really grinding on you, like really gnawing at you and at your being, so you begin to ask these questions of why am I bothering? And it's just every corner you turn, there's another wall in front of you, and you turn another corner, there's another wall and another one. And it just feels like you're just banging your head up against this wall at every single turn. And it's, as I said earlier, when I met Dan in 1995, that became my lighthouse. I know that that's what I wanted to be. This is how I wanted to do it. So he gave me this understanding of what it meant to be an elite coach. And then I spent the next 15 or 20 years trying to become that elite coach in a system that wasn't really ready for it, within a body, me, that wasn't really ready to fight that system in a way that which it was effective. So all I did was I just kept on banging up against that wall. You don't create change just by hammering against that wall all the time, right? Sometimes you have to go around the wall, over the wall, under the wall, whatever it is. But banging up against the wall and just arguing with people all the time is not the way to do it. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But as you quite rightly said, Canada just wasn't in a system at that point where it was ready to change the way in which we thought about sport and performance. And there was a few of us that kind of knew what we wanted to do, but we were existing within a system that wasn't really allowing for it. There was too many constraints around it. And I feel like just over the course of time, this just became overly frustrating for me. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I've been trying this now for a while. I'm not really making any money at this. I really like it, but the frustrations just became overwhelming, overbearing, to the point where I started thinking about what else can I do? What else am I interested in? What else can I see myself doing for the next 30 or 40 years of my life? And at that point, it was either I was going to start a tea shop, or I was going to do something in food. So I was either actually going to open up like a tea shop and sell tea, because I really like tea. And it wasn't just a tea shop, but it was going to be like a record shop, a bookshop, and a little lounge, or maybe a little coffee shop in the morning or whatever, revolved around this little tea shop. And I felt like I could make this little community out of that in Calgary. And I thought, man, I could see myself doing this now. for the next 30, 40 years of my life, just having this little small business, hanging out in the corner, playing records, reading books, maybe serving some tea, you know. And it got to the point where, yeah, it was a simple life. And I put together this business plan around this. Man, I could do this. And then the other option was to work in food, because I really enjoyed sort of understanding more and more about food. And that's actually what I did. So I met these people that were starting a company in Calgary called Brick Lane, which was an organic food market that's still there to this day.
Yeah.
We've got 5 different Brick Lanes now in Calgary. And I was one of their very first employees. And I became a full-time employee with Brick Lane as their produce manager and produce purchaser. And through that, you know, you get to understand more about farming and more about sustainable agriculture. And I got to know farmers and understand their different challenges and understand that entire ecosystem. And that was really fun for me. And I was doing that and just coaching part-time, because I had a small group of athletes that I was coaching up until the Vancouver Olympic Games. And after Vancouver, I was going to be done. That was it. I was going to go full-time into food. I was just coaching Kaylee and Steve Messler and, you know, Steve Holcomb and a few others and Les Ellis Brown. And that was it. I was going to do, you know, 3 hours of coaching a day and then be done. And then, as I said, we met in 08. I remember it was 08 because I left in March of 2010. And I remember we worked together in high school for 2 years. So it was 08 and 09. And that, as I said, it sort of reignited my passion for coaching speed at its really, you know, at the real peak of it, you know, not just speed as part of something else, but all right, I really want to get into track and field, not just speed as part of something. And this is what I saw with Akeem. And then, you know, I don't know how fast you ran in that first year. It was 10:49 to 10:50 or whatever it was. And but it said, all right, this guy's really good. He's really improving. The next year he improved some more. I said, all right, this is what I want to do. And that's when I reached out to Dan, and I said, I understood that Dan was going over to the UK. So I called him up and said, Dan, I know you're going to the UK. You got any gigs over there? Because I'm sick of Calgary. I want to get out of here and do something different. And he says, yeah, I'd love to have an assistant. I'd love to have some help over here. So I flew over there in September of 2009 and interviewed to be Dan Pass's assistant coach. I got the job, and the Olympic Games finished on the last day of February in 2010, and I was on a plane the day after and moved to London. And that, you know, that literally changed my life. So it was, yeah, that's the story.
Man, before to understand 2012, I think we have to go back to 94, 95, when you met Dan, and that whole games with being with him and being with Donovan. And I want to get your thoughts on that from what you learned from Dan. Dan doesn't always say much, but there are also things that you can kind of get from, and what questions were you asking him? But also, you know, I ran 11:02, I think, in the 10th grade. Mr. O has kind of forced me to do track. I was like, man, why would I want to do something that's every other sport's punishment? I don't want to run. What are you doing, man? And I ran 11 flat, and then we started working together. And I think I opened up 10:08, but I finished 10:49. And I think to this day, one of my best races was that 200 that I ran in the rain, in Calgary, because in my opinion, I didn't know much about times or anything like that at the time, but I figured, you know, that was a 20-point race under other conditions. But you know, when you left, I was actually considering, a small part of me was considering, I was like, man, you know, if Stu stays in Calgary, perhaps I would go to a Canadian school, but then you left and you took that option away from me. So it's all good. But going back to 94, 95, Stu, and you've said before, you know, Dan was an intricate part in your progress as a coach. What were those 95, 96 times with him like?
Yeah, it's so I met Dan through Donovan Bailey, who was training with Dan at the time. And I met Donovan back in 92 or 93 when he came out to Calgary to try out for the bobsled team.
That's right.
And I don't know who he met. I think he met Ken first, right? And I was out of town. I think I was in Bahamas or somewhere. And Ken said, I got this buddy coming into town, or I got this guy coming into town. Can he stay at your place? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And figuring that he'd be gone by the time I got home, so no stress, right? And I get home and he's there. I remember walking into my house, and you probably heard this story, right? So you know what's coming up. And I walk into the house and the music's playing, and I look into the living room. Said, "Who are you?" And he looked at me and said, "Who are you?" I said, "Who are you? Why are you here in my house listening to my music in my living room, sitting on my chair?" And that was my introduction to Donovan, and we became pretty tight ever since. And then when I got more into coaching sprinters, Donovan says, "You need to come down and meet Dan, my coach, because he's the guy. You really need to learn from this guy." So I went down there and I took a group of sprinters down there. And, as you said, Dan doesn't say a lot. And that's probably the biggest thing that I learned from Dan. Dan is not going to give you the solution to a problem. He's going to try to put you in a situation where you can figure out your own solution. We don't learn if somebody just gives us the answers. That's not learning. That's somebody telling you what the answers are. Think about how we learn when we're kids. You have a problem and you figure it out. If you're told the answer, you haven't figured it out, and there's no learning then. So there's no teaching. And Dan, for me, was the ultimate in teaching. And he showed me what teaching was, and then what that teaching-learning relationship was, and then what the coach-athlete relationship was out of that, is to ask the relevant questions, putting the athletes in the appropriate positions where they can learn stuff by their own, because that's what this is. If you're not learning it, you don't, or if you're not figuring it out, you're not learning it, and you're not applying it when you need to. So that's the biggest thing that I learned from Dan, was that there's a method to his madness. There was a reason why he's not always saying stuff. I know it was a source of frustration for many athletes, and it's not always the way to do it with many athletes, right? And it's the same with my own career as a coach. Many athletes just want to be told, "Coach, just tell me, man. Just tell me the answer here, and I get it." And sometimes you actually do have to do that.
Yeah.
But Dan's bias was, athlete needs to learn here. I'm not going to tell them. It's about, the old motto of, I'll teach you how to fish and you can eat for a lifetime, rather than I'll give you a fish and you can eat for a day. That was Dan. So that became me, and that became my way of coaching, which I know probably led to some frustrations even within, you and me and our coaching relationship, right? Because you were one of those guys at that age that, "Coach, just tell me what to do, man. Just give me the answer." Like, you were very introspective in many other ways, but in the coaching track and field way, you just wanted, "Just tell me what to do. I'm going to go do it. That's fine." So it's, I think it probably took me too long to figure that out, but we can't live our life.
It's I have 3 more questions for you, Stu. It's funny you said that, because it reminded me of a moment when we all started training together, with that Saturday group, Steve, Kaylee Humphrey, Steve Holcomb, and a couple others. And I remember you paired me and Steve up to do some 40s, and I remember I did a 40 and I came back and I said, "How was that?" And you kind of gave me some brief details, but then you said, "Every time you do a stride and you come back, I want you to have a question for me." And I'm like, "I don't even talk this much. What do you mean you want me to have a question for you?" And I remember doing it for the 3rd time, and I was walking back with Steve. I was like, "Steve, what are you going to ask him?" I was going to steal his question. So I was going to steal his, but as I got older, I started to understand why. And that's why I started to ask questions and became pretty inquisitive as an athlete, especially with therapists, because I wanted to understand why certain things was reacting the way it was, and why I felt sore, and why when I do this, I don't feel sore. So I became inquisitive to the process of, how do I allow my body to move as completely as it can? One thing is evidence, Stu, is support, right? Support goes a long way in any environment But it works when everybody's on the same page. And you and I have talked a little bit about, I've spoken a little bit about Dan as well too, and with Greg a little bit as well too, in 2012 with the British team, Dan Paff, and I spoke a little bit with Gordon Bosworth as well too. Those were special games for everybody from what I understand. What do you remember about that year, and kind of what made it so special for you guys as a team?
Yeah, it was a fantastic time. That was a really key couple years in my life, was the lead up to those games. And I was really lucky that, you know, so when I got over there, I got over there as Dan's assistant. That quickly became, Dan is the coach of all of the field eventers, and the long sprinters. And I was the coach of the short sprinters. And I had total freedom to do whatever I wanted to do with that, which was fantastic and a great learning experience for me. But we had a super group, man. Like, we had a great group of athletes, but also a great group of staff that supported the athletes and supported the coaches, as you mentioned, you know, whether it be Gordon Bosworth or Jerry Ramagita or, you know, Kevin Tyler, who's my business partner now, and Derek Evely, and you know, Glenn Kearney, and all of these, Paul Bricey, all these great people. So that's what makes anything great, is the people that you're around at the time. So it's, you know, I'm doing really cool things in a cool place at a cool time leading up to this London Olympic Games with cool people. You can't ask for more than that, right? That's it. Yeah. Cool things, cool place, cool time, cool people. And I had it all there in London for those 2.5 to 3 years I was there. Just a fantastic time. London did an amazing job of putting the games on. You could feel the excitement, the energy of the entire city. We had a really good group of athletes that were competing there. Fortunate enough where Greg, you know, won an Olympic gold medal. So he brought so much buzz and excitement to the entire group and the entire system. Yeah, it's just an amazing time. Just loved it. Absolutely loved it.
When it comes to mistakes, Stu, how have you handled that in your career, right? Because, you know, certain things sit with us a little bit longer. And with criticism, you know, you may say you mishandled this person well, you didn't do a good job with this person could do well with so many things. And there's so many voices that come inside the play. And I've always been a person who says, you know, eventually when you hear something enough times over and over again, parts of that start to trickle in. You start to say, wait a minute, did I do something wrong? Right? How have you handled that over your career when it comes to, you know, maybe criticism, you know, making mistakes and just trying to be better, not only as a coach, but as a person?
Yeah, it's, you know, I'm generally probably genetically somewhat stubborn, somewhat hard-headed. You probably got to beat me over the head a few times. Hey, that's a mistake, for me to finally figure it out. Oh yeah, that was a mistake. You're right. And that's, again, one of the things that we get better at over the course of time. We recognize that a little bit earlier. So that said, you know, there's a few heuristics here. A mistake is an opportunity to learn and just move forward and get better. So as soon as you can recognize that it was a mistake, you recognize that there's an opportunity within that to learn from it and get better and move forward and be a better human, or a better coach, or whatever it is that you're trying to get better at. So I think I've got a lot better at that over the course of time. I wasn't very good at that in my early career at all, as we sort of talked about. It just becomes about you, and you don't understand where you are, where you're fitting within this whole system, right? So that's number one, is just to take those opportunities take those mistakes as opportunities to grow. And secondly, I briefly mentioned this earlier, is we have to grow with positivity. We don't get to live our lives backwards. We can't just, all right, I made a mistake back there, and I'm really going to think about that mistake over and over and over again. Or I made that mistake a few years ago. Like, I'm really good at having a short-term memory around those things, around it being a negative influence in my life, and I just move forward. You know, I'm pretty stoic in that sense, where, okay, it's gone now. So I learn from it and I move forward, and it's in the past. And there's obviously exceptions to those things. And if you've made a significant mistake in your life, and those mistakes are going to haunt you from time to time. They will come back in your memory and say, Yeah. But again, that's another opportunity for you to, it's coming back and reminding you that that was a mistake, and they don't make that mistake again, learn from it. So I feel like even then, when it does, periodically jump back into my brain, that's just another opportunity for growth for me and for learning from it, ensure that I do learn from it and move forward. So it's, I think there's two complementary things there, right? Is one is learning from those mistakes, and second is not really getting so tied down into that mistake that you can't actually move forward. So that's how I try to live things at this point.
Last question, Stu. You've been coaching now for 34, 35 years, something like that. We're just going to round it up, 35, 36, something like that, right?
Yeah. So I started coaching when I was 14. I'm 52, so that's 38. But I really started coaching seriously, in the early 90s. So I said 92. So this is probably 30 years seriously. Yeah.
I got to ask, Stu, man, because, for me, knowing you as earlier and as long as I have to date, I didn't really think you'd be in the game this long, right? What redefines your purpose now at this stage in your life for you to continue doing what you're doing?
Yeah, there's a way to look at that question, and I think it's the wrong way. If you define your purpose as a singular, static thing that doesn't change over time, I think that's the wrong thing. We talk a lot about the importance of finding a purpose. It's not finding a purpose. It's finding purposes, the reasons for doing what you're doing, the purposes for you to being here on this planet, and understanding that you're a dynamical being and you change over time, and your interests change over time, and the people that you hang out with changes over time, and the environment that you exist within changes over time. All of these things are dynamical. So it's for you to expect to have one singular purpose from day one to day a million is not going to happen. So it's, for me, I've always been pretty good at just, all right, I'm a curious person. From curiosity, I believe, comes some sort of creativity. When you're curious about things, you look at ways to expand upon them and transform upon them. And then through that comes some sort of wisdom, ideally at the end. So it's, yes, I've been coaching for a long time, but I coach in different ways. For me, coaching is the ultimate in generalist professions, right? Because you have to know a bunch of different things about a bunch of different things. So there's always opportunities for me to go down these rabbit holes if I'm curious about something. So those have always been there. And then since 2017, well, even earlier, right? So I was a business owner. When I was in Calgary, I had my own business, shared businesses with other colleagues and things. And then since 2017, when I bought Altis, or when me and my business partners bought Altis, now I'm also an entrepreneur and a business owner and a manager of people. So it's not just coaching now. Now it's coaching and all of these other things that I need to get better at. So this whole mix becomes my purpose. And all of these things, what's within all that mix and how can I become better at that? That's why I'm here.
Well, Stu, man, thank you again for your time, man. As I've said before in other interviews and stuff of that nature, I've said, whenever you decide to hang up the track and field aspect of coaching, put the whistle down, man. I think genuinely you would be one of the best biomechanics lecturers, period, man. I've always respected that about you. You taught me some words that I've never heard before, like posterior chain and all that. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds good, right? So, man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you, the person, man, and it's always love from over here. What is I
appreciate you, man. It's so heartwarming for me to see you doing what you're doing. So much pride for you, from thinking back to that young 15-year-old Akeem Haynes and seeing what you did through your athletic career, and then watching you grow post-athletic career. Has just been super proud of you, buddy.
I appreciate that, man.
Great chat. I appreciate you.
We'll talk soon, man. Have a good rest of your day, man.
I do. Thanks, man.